12.
And I believe next up, the honourable member for Essex.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. As always, it's an honor to rise in this House to represent the amazing folks of Essex, and I always give all thanks to God for giving me the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, just a couple weeks ago, I lost my mama. And if the House will allow, I'd just like to make a few words here before I dive into Bill C-58. Mom would text me during question period. And she would text me and say, "Well, Christopher, you're not wearing a tie today, so you must not be speaking." Mom would text me and say, "Christopher, stop chewing gum." Mom would text me and say, "Smile." And Mom would text me and say, "Christopher, wake up." It's the little things in life, Mr. Speaker, that we get through, and the real little things in life, Mr. Speaker, is the cookies. Mom's chocolate chip cookies. Mom, she was known on the Hill for her chocolate chip cookies. But if you did something bad, I would get a text that would say, "Apparently such and such member doesn't get a chocolate chip cookie today." She was a servant, Mr. Speaker, served beyond belief. She's a great, great reason as to why I am where I am, and I am who I am. And although those texts have come to a very, very abrupt end, after only 13 days in hospital battling cancer, her legacy lives on. And so Helen, Mama, Dad, Kim, my brothers Jeff and Kim, if you're watching, just know that she is in the House of Commons with us all here today. And as I promised you at bedside, Mama, I'll make you proud. I live to serve, and I love you more. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you to the House for indulging me. Mr. Speaker, Bill C-58. Bill C-58, it has two main elements. First, it would ban the use of replacement workers in federally regulated workplaces such as banks, airports, and telecommunications, but not the federal public service. It replaces an existing, albeit much more limited, prohibition on the use of replacement workers in the Canadian Labour Code. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, Bill C-58 amends the maintenance of activities process to encourage quicker agreement between employers and trade unions in relation to what activities should be maintained in the case of a strike or a lockout, as well as faster decision-making by the Canadian Industrial Relations Board, or CIRB, in this connection. The provisions of Bill C-58 would only apply to federally regulated workers. If enacted, the provisions of C-58 will enter into force 18 months after royal assent has been received. So it brings on a lot of discussion, a lot of questions, but a lot of discussion, I suppose, Mr. Speaker. So I guess the first thing I would start out by saying, and very, very proud to be the shadow minister, the critic of labor, for labor. I have traveled across this country from coast to coast to coast, literally from coast to coast to coast, speaking with both unionized and non-unionized workers. And generally speaking, Speaker, whether I'm in Halifax or St. John's, Newfoundland, or am I in Vancouver, at the Port of Vancouver, or Montreal.
For a second, because I'm thinking you might need one of these, so just so you get cleared up.
Thank you very much.
All right.
There's a cell phone.
No, I guess we're hearing there might be a cell phone nearby the microphone, so just try to pull those back as much as you can. Perfect. The honourable member for Essex.
Thank you, Speaker. Thanks for the passion and compassion. This is what Mum would want. This is exactly what Mum would want. So as I was mentioning, Speaker, you know, I've been across this country, and I've met with both unionized and non-unionized workforces and their management and the folks in the boots on the ground. And ultimately, I hear it all the time. All they say is, just let me go to work. I want to go to work. I don't really want to be on strike. What I really want to do is have a good paying job that I can ultimately feed my family with. I can put diapers on my babies. I can fill their little mouths with pablum. I can afford to buy my wife some flowers. And I can't do that when I'm on strike. And so, you know, I really think at the end of the day, why we're seeing an unprecedented amount of strikes across this country for the last number of years. Truthfully, every time I turn around, we're dealing with another strike. Why? Well, one has to really wonder, is it the cost of living? Is it the cost of food that our workers can't afford? Is it the high interest rates? Is it the carbon tax on fuel and food? Is that the reason why? And there's always goes back to the same question, is why are we seeing a high, unprecedented amount of strikes? And we have to believe that it is due to inflation. It's due to the cost of living, uncertainty, no doubt. Speaker, I'll speak quickly to the Stellantis plant in Windsor. So the Windsor Stellantis battery plant. The one good thing about Air Canada, Mr. Speaker, is that they're most always delayed. And that allows me more time to speak to my constituents back home from the airport. And last night I spoke to IBEW, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers. And he said, here's the problem, Chris. We have an amazing, amazing workforce here in Canada, electrical workers. We actually are bringing them in from Manitoba. We're bringing them in from Alberta. They're here in Windsor. They're literally here in Windsor to start to work here. But we're very, very concerned of all of the folks being brought in potentially from South Korea to do all this work. Because in the past, these same folks have done all the work at the Tier 2s and the Tier 3s. They've done all that work. He said, now I understand you may need to bring in, 10 or 20 or 30 people to program the computers. The rest of it, we already know how to do. Then I spoke to the Carpenters Union, and they said the same thing. We have the whole workforce here. Why are we bringing in folks from other places to do the work that we, quite frankly, are trained to do? And I guess part of this bill that's somewhat confusing to me, Mr. Speaker, is that although it is only for federally regulated workers, what's ironic is it's not for the federally regulated public sector workers. So if the government is going to tell businesses that they have to bring, there'll be no sorry, thank you very much. Why would the government not do it for themselves? It makes one wonder. Amazing yields in southwestern Ontario this year, Mr. Speaker, from our farmers. Some of the highest bumper crops that we've seen in a long time. and about 90 or 92% of our grain is exported. If we can't get the grain onto the ships and overseas, we have a major issue. And we have a major issue right now because we just went through an issue on the Great Lakes, which, by the way, Mr. Speaker, got solved. Just like what was reported yesterday on the news from No Frills. No Frills got solved yesterday. Just like the Port of Montreal and the Port of Vancouver was solved. And how was it solved, Speaker? It was solved at the table through democracy. There's always a solution when we speak. There's always a solution when people come to the table and have good, fair, strong, respectful dialogue. That's how things get solved, Speaker. My concern, Speaker, is because I sit on Transport Committee, because I'm a bona fide farmer, because I was a businessman, this regulation, this legislation, potential legislation, could actually drive less jobs for the country. Because it is a matter of fact that this could drive potential investment, Canadian potential business investment away from Canada, which ultimately means less jobs. Ironically, Mr. Speaker, tomorrow, 9 a.m., I head over to the Senate. I'm going to the Senate to do my darndest to get Bill C-241, my private member's bill, through committee tomorrow. And Speaker, C-241 is a bill that will allow the write-off of travel expenses for skilled trades, both unionized and non-unionized skilled trades.
Hear, hear.
And I don't know of anyone in this House that would disagree with me when I say this. Canada is in a major housing crisis, absolute housing crisis. And Bill C-241 will allow the mobility of our skilled trades, again, both unionized and non-unionized workers, to travel across the country. So I head back to Stellantis now, and I look at the entire project, not only Stellantis, but upwards of $50 billion for our 3 battery plants. Well, I know one thing for sure. We need skilled trades workers at those sites. But I also know we need to build homes from coast to coast to coast. And so hopefully in the Senate tomorrow, they will give us the green light, so to speak, and we can get Bill C-241 through the Senate to support our skilled trade workers. Again, Mr. Speaker, this is just for clarity for anybody that's watching at home, which I'm sure there's a lot of them watching me. Just for clarity, this is only for federally regulated workers. So this does not dive into the provinces and their regulations. You know, Mr. Speaker, this is going to sound like a goofy one, but when the Port of Vancouver strike was on, I got a phone call to my office, and I called the gentleman back, and he said, "I own a coffee shop. I can't get any cups. I can't get any cups for the coffee. So I'm going to have to shut my doors because I can't get any cups from the coffee because I ordered them overseas." Sounds goofy. Sounds small and insignificant. That's one more business that shut its door. That's one more business that isn't paying taxes. That's one more business that isn't employing somebody, that's laying off somebody. And that's one more business that Canada is, quite frankly, bleeding. Speaker, there's nothing more important than our labor force. My father always said it the best. You can have the greatest widget in the world. You won't build one, And you won't sell one without people. There is not a business that I know of that isn't and only will ever be about the people. The answer is very simple, Mr. Speaker. Get to the table, get the folks at the table, and have a conversation. It's worked in the past. Deliberations have worked in the past. That's where the answer lies. In closing, Speaker, sorry, how much time do I have left? About 5? Yeah. In closing, Speaker, I guess I'll just leave it with this. I come from the business world, but I also was boots on the ground. In my role as Shadow Minister for Labor, I've got to meet some pretty extraordinary folks. I think about the folks at the ILWU out in Vancouver, who treated me just with so much respect when I visited them 2 or 3 times. I think about the folks out in Halifax and St. John's, Newfoundland. Think about the folks in my own backyard in Essex. And again, it's resounding that it's only about the people. There's only one way that we're going to rebuild Canada, that Canada is going to be built, that we're going to have enough homes, that we're going to have the manufacturing, that we're going to be frontline, leading-edge technology, and that's with the people. But, Mr. Speaker, it needs to be Canadian people. It cannot be folks from overseas taking away the jobs of Canadians. And so, Speaker, in closing, I want to thank you again for allowing me to celebrate my mother and allowing me to have a little bit of freedom here in my speech today. But, Speaker, I'm so darn passionate and compassionate when it comes to our labor force that it means the world to me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.